Okay, so this is a topic that often brings up a lot of questions and a lot of discussion. So I'm going to run through a few slides and then we're going to open this up to everybody. We're going to, any questions, any issues that have come up for you, we're going to talk about them. So let's just start with kind of the key question here that we're going to be working off of today. And it's that healthy relationships are a key factor in living a quality of life. And disruptions in appropriate social skills, cognitive impairments, and challenges in day-to-day living can impact a person's ability to form and keep relationships. So we know this. We know that there are challenges that are inherent with the person with PWS that can make it difficult for them to form and keep relationships. But the question is a person less deserving of meaningful relationships simply because they need more support in creating and keeping them? Or should we, as families and caregivers, work to create an environment where relationship skills can be learned and improved upon with practice and support? So my hope is that our answer is yes, they are more than deserving of this. So let's kind of get into some of the things that get in the way. Now, the first mistake that we make is that we make an assumption that people with PWS have the same set of skills that we do, and they don't. And by not acknowledging that, we are doing them a disservice. So, the first thing that can get in the way is executive functioning disorder. Now, we know that people with PWS live with executive functioning disorder, but what does that even mean? Well, here's what it means. Executive functioning disorder or executive functioning skills are the set of skills that you need to complete a task, any task, anything from getting ready to go to work in the morning to planning a wedding and everything in between. In order to do that, you need a set of skills. If you have executive functioning disorder, you don't have that set of skills, and those are organizing, planning, being able to be flexible, being able to predict how somebody else is going to act. That's a really big one. If you have executive functioning disorder, you do not have the ability to be able to predict how somebody else is going to act. And this is why oftentimes we run into issues, especially in school settings, where a student wants to be around the same teacher or aide or staff person all the time. And they get really upset when that person isn't available because they've learned how to predict how that person is going to act. So they feel safe with that person. So one of the biggest things, so that's huge. That's a really big one. But the other one is that people with executive functioning disorder also have slow processing speed. And if you have slow processing speed, you hear the last thing that was said. So just to kind of give you an example of how this works. Your child comes up to you, they're getting ready to go on a trip or on a day trip to the park, to the zoo, something they're really excited about. And they say to you, I can't find my coat. And what you say back to them is, I know exactly where your coat is. Your coat is behind your door. Go get your coat. We're leaving in 5 minutes. So your child came up to you and said, I can't find my coat. And what you just said to them was, we're leaving in 5 minutes. So oftentimes you have these events, tantrums, meltdowns, whatever you want to call them. And you think back and say, I have no idea why this happened. Oftentimes it's because the communication on your part wasn't good. Because if you understand the person with PWS, their brain, especially executive functioning disorder and slow processing speed, they hear the last thing that you said. So make sure the last thing that you say is answering their question. Keep the answer short. If they have more questions, you know they're going to ask you, right? There's no question about that. They're going to ask you. So make sure the communication's really, really good. So the next thing that can get in the way of forming and keeping relationships is sensory processing disorder. You guys have been hearing me talk about this forever. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but there's a couple of things that are really important about this. One is oftentimes people with PWS get mislabeled as being lazy or unmotivated, not wanting to try new things. But the truth is, because of their sensory processing disorder, and most notably their vestibular sense, your vestibular sense is your sense of balance. Infants develop this before any other sense because they're constantly moving their heads back and forth. But infants with PWS don't because they have poor muscle tone. They're floppy babies. So they never fully develop their vestibular sense. So they're hesitant to try new things. They're hesitant to walk on anything that isn't completely even. Working on the vestibular sense will help them feel more in control of their body and more apt to try new things, to leave the house more, to be a little bit more adventurous. Because without that development of the vestibular sense, they always feel like they're going to fall down. The other thing that's important to know about this is that people with sensory processing disorder have a really difficult time explaining to you how they're feeling physically. We want to be able to teach the child with PWS how to tell you how they feel so they don't feel the need to show you how they feel. So just two important things about that. The next one is issues with impulse control. We know that this is an issue. We know that even if your child knows how to do something and knows exactly what to do, 99 times out of 100, they might do it, but that 100th time, they're going to do something that you did not expect because of issues with impulse control. The last one is theory of mind. And when we're talking about relationships, this one is the most important. So theory of mind is a developmental process that starts around age 4 or 5. And it's the developmental process that lets you know that other people have different likes and preferences than you do. This is a developmental process that happens. You don't have to do anything. It just happens automatically. People with PWS seemingly have an immature theory of mind. They're called selfish, egocentric, manipulative. None of those things are true. What's true is that their brain hasn't developed theory of mind, which means they have absolutely no idea that other people have different beliefs, experiences, preferences than they do. So if their favorite animal is a giraffe, then everyone's favorite animal is a giraffe. Why are you even talking about zebras? Giraffes are the best. And there's no moving them from that. Not because they don't care that you like zebras. They actually care very much about you. But if giraffes are their favorite animal, that is the only animal you can talk about because giraffes are the best. That's their brain. That's not them just being difficult. That is the way that their brain works. So when we're talking about relationships, imagine how difficult it would be for you to be successful at work, at school, successful having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or even just a best friend, if you didn't understand how other people thought, you didn't understand that other people felt differently than you do, you have really hard time holding in your impulses. And when we're looking at all of these things put together, if you can't predict how another person is going to act, you feel really unsafe around most people in your life. These are really, really important things to understand because we know there is a need for the person with PWS to have friends, to have a boyfriend, to have a girlfriend. And we know that their nature is they want to be the best son, the best daughter, the best friend, the best student. They want to be the best person that they can be. But these things get in the way. So, let me just, all right. When we're talking about quality of life and living a quality of life, what does that mean? Well, there's a formula for a quality of life that's pretty much understood globally that quality of life is meaningful work, meaningful relationships, and leisure of your choice. Here's what's really important about this. The word meaningful is very personal. What's meaningful to me may not be meaningful to you. So we are talking about allowing people to have a quality of life of their design, what's meaningful to them. That's what's really important about this. So, in order to do these things, the person with PWS is going to need support. So, what's our role? We need to support the person's their needs and their wants. So, when we're talking about needs and wants, it's important to understand what the unmet need is. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. I'm going to give you a scenario of a young woman that I knew many years ago. So, what is the unmet need? We often see the younger child with PWS start to talk about marriage and having kids and having boyfriends and having girlfriends when they see their older siblings doing it. So, it's more of an expectation. So, if we can shift the way, even the way that we talk about things like that, because we put so much emphasis on these developmental milestones of neurotypical people that we're kind of leaving out the people who are not neurotypical, right? So we need to start celebrating getting a pet, going on to the next grade, being a really good aunt or uncle, the same way that we celebrate getting married, having children, getting a promotion at work. We need to make sure that we're talking about these things that as just as important as the milestones as their siblings. And that's going to help a little bit for the person with PWS to understand that they are valued. They have an intrinsic value, even if they're not getting married, not having children, not going to college. The things that they are doing are equally as important as the things that their siblings are doing. Arranging for opportunities, for access to opportunities. This one can be really tricky because we know that the person with PWS doesn't just have to be friends with someone else with PWS, but we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to meet people that are on the same developmental level that they are. More often than not, the person with PWS has a younger developmental age than they do chronological age. So we want to make sure that the opportunities they're giving access, that we're giving them access to, are with people who aren't just the same age, but are the same developmental age. Facilitate relationships when they form. This is something that we often see people with PWS being able to make a friend but not keep a friend. So one of the things that can be really helpful, especially in school age children, is having them present to their classroom what PWS is. Not the parent, not the teacher, have them do it. If they're able to present that information, the other kids in the class are more likely to see them as someone that could be a good friend, that could be someone they want to spend time with, rather than the odd man out or the kid that's really different. If they're able to own that and say what they have and talk about what PWS is and what they need, that's a really good step in helping the other classmates form friendships with them. We need to understand the dignity of risk. There are times when we may be not comfortable with a friendship or worried about them spending time with someone. We need to understand that in order to grow and learn, failure needs to happen. We do need to make mistakes. We're all here where we are today because we've made mistakes and learned from them. And then, of course, to intervene as necessary. Okay, so here is the scenario. I'm going to read this to you, and then I'd love it if we could talk about this for a minute. I'd love to get people's kind of suggestions on what this family could have done, and then I'll tell you what the outcome was. So, Celia became fixated on a peer in her school, and she stalked him in person. So she followed him everywhere. By phone, on social media, she was constantly around him. She lost interest in her favorite activities and did nothing but focus on where he was, what he was doing, and who he was spending time with. And this was getting pretty intense. She would text and email girls that he spent time with and threaten to kill them and burn their houses down. She would stand on his lawn and yell for him to come out. She was throwing objects at his house and windows when he wouldn't respond. So we arranged a meeting between Celia and this boy with social workers and their families present. We met with the peer ahead of time and helped him with a script. This was similar to doing an intervention. He told her clearly he was not interested in a relationship with her, and that if she stopped stalking, if she stopped stalking him, he would still agree to say hi to her when they passed. He explained that if she did not stop, he would not like her and he would never say hi to her again. She continued, and her peer stopped saying hi to her, and the escalation and causing an escalation in behaviors at home and in school. So, what do people think about that? Oftentimes, when we have these issues with relationships, that kind of fantasy world comes in, where they think just because someone said hi to them, that means they're their boyfriend, or um, they're in the classroom with someone, so they must be best friends. It was kind of what happened here. So what do people think? What could her parents do? Because this is getting pretty bad.
This is a really tricky situation, and I, as if myself as a parent, I would absolutely need to seek help. I do not know what I would need to do here. So this is a really
Yeah.
good one to bring to us. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. 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 What's the unmet need? What is the unmet need in this situation?
Would it be that a friendship, an actual
Yeah, a
peer
connection.
friendship?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is what happened. Her family knew another family through Facebook. They lived a couple of towns away who had a son um, who also was neurodivergent, and they got them together. And Celia and that boy became boyfriend and girlfriend and spent all their free time together. And because that need was met, she never even thought about this boy at school again. It was never about this boy. It was about wanting to have a boyfriend, a friend, a connection. Her parents were close to pulling her out of this school, but the same thing would have happened at the next school because that need was never met. So once this need was met, this behavior completely stopped. So when we're talking about friendships and being in relationships, it is so important to find out what the person is really asking for and is really needing. My favorite story ever was working with a young man who had a girlfriend, and he said he wanted to have sex. So we did everything that you do. You do all the trainings on consent and boundaries and all the sex ed. And halfway through, he was looking like he was really confused when we started talking about things. So I stopped it and I said, "You're saying that you want to have sex with your girlfriend. Tell me what that means." And he said, "Oh, it's easy. You get a hotel room, you sit and watch a movie and order a pizza." That's what he thought sex was. I mean, he really wasn't that far off. But had we kept going with that, he was so confused when we started talking about in the sections on anatomy and sex ed. That's not what he wanted at all. So it's really important when you're having these conversations to make sure you know exactly what they're asking for. Because in that case, that was certainly not what he was asking for. So, oops. Okay. So, just some takeaways. Act out of a mindset of inclusion and opportunity. So the people with PWS have the right to be friends, to be boyfriend and girlfriend, to have intimate relationships if they want to. but be really curious about the unmet needs and make sure that you're not spending a lot of energy and time and stress on a particular situation where the solution might be the need is unmet, not that particular situation. And also remember, your definition of a relationship is not universal. So I work with a number of people who have fiancés and they see each other once every 2 years at conference. And that's it. And that's all they want. They're very, very happy with that. I also work with individuals who are actually married and live together. So, and everything in between. So make sure that you have an understanding that your definition of a relationship is not universal.